The Federal Court in Putrajaya today found Malaysia Kini liable for contempt of court over comments posted by its readers. However, the news portal's editor-in-chief, Stephen Gunn, was found not guilty of the same charge.
I'm terribly disappointed with what has happened. What crimes has Malaysia Kini committed that is so horrendous that we've been forced to pay a hefty fine of $500,000 ringgit when there are individuals who are, been charged of money laundering and abuse of power involving billions of ringgit, if not billions of ringgit, walk free.
The 1MDB scandal is one of the greatest financial frauds in history. $4.5 billion was allegedly misappropriated from the Malaysian State Investment Fund. How did they do it?
Started by asking questions that were not satisfactorily answered. All I got was lots of legal letters.
Presiden PAS telah memfailkan satu prosiding fitnah.
Legal action for libel against the founder and editors of Sarawak Report, Claire Louise Brown.
I mean, I felt very lonely at some points. The media were very nervous about covering 1MDB by and large. I mean, obviously some of the major newspapers did come in on some parts of the story, which was brilliant. There was a massive, heavily funded campaign to discredit me personally and my reporting, and it felt pretty good when the DOJ came in and vindicated just about everything I'd said.
Most of us don't feel there is such a thing as free press.
Kembali diterbitkan. Turut kembali ke penerbitan.
Hi everyone, a very warm welcome. Hi everyone, a very warm welcome to all. My name is Maylin and I'm the Media Strengthening Officer at CIJ. And thank you very much for tuning in to our talk show today. Titled Malaysian Press in Distress, How Independent Journalism Keep the Powers in Check, which is organized in conjunction with the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. So this panel is a national follow-up to the regional forum featuring key leaders that oppose media freedom, such as the recent Nobel Prize winner, Maria Ressa, which is supported by the Dutch Embassy in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. There are three objectives of the talk show today. Firstly, to raise the awareness of the importance of independent journalism to keep the powers in check. And number two, to highlight the media crackdown, which is one of the key hurdles that prevents independent journalism in Malaysia. And thirdly, which is a very interesting component for all here, which is the launch of Purple Book. So everyone who attended today for the full event will be entitled to a Purple Book. And also some of you guys will be entitled to a t-shirt as well. So those who are joining us today through Facebook Live, just key in your name and also your email address so that we can follow up later. So what is the Purple Book and why do we need it? I'll just keep it to the end. So you have to make sure that you watch it till the end to know what is this Purple Book about and how it is going to benefit you. So apart from the inspiring speakers that we have today, we have a talented moderator with us today, which is Zurairi. And Zurairi is a journalist with nearly a decade of experience focusing on religion, human rights, and current affairs. He currently serves as the news editor at Malay Mail and runs a subscribe-only essay collection of Malaysian social media and pop culture stories at Berita Baru Naab. He's also the East Asian representative of this International Association of Religion Journalists. So before I pass on to Zurairi, I would like to bring everyone here today back to the past 20 months of media crackdown since the shredding coup. So Dinesh, if you can just quickly put out that video to bring us back to the media crackdown for the past 20 months. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Myeling. Salam sejahtera and good evening, everyone. It's an honor. Thank you for having me host this forum on Malaysian media in distress, how independent journalists can keep the powers in check. I am honored to be here with CIJ Freedom Film Fest and also Geramm. And today, of course, we are here in remembrance or in conjunction with the International Day to End Impunity for crimes against journalists. And perhaps with this event, we can remember all the journalists in our region and also all across the world who have been victims of impunity by state and non-state actors while just doing their job as journalists. I think we will, and today we have three speakers, friends and also respected journalists who are joining us this evening. We have Emmanuel Samaratisa, Prema Chandran, and also Claire Castlebron. I think we'll just get right to it with our first speaker, Emmanuel Samaratisa. So he is very modest in his biography that he sent to me. He describes himself as a Kuala Lumpur-based investigative journalist who covers the intersection of business and politics. So I'll just add on some of the stuff that I know about him. He's the outgoing executive editor for the news portal The Vibes, and also he runs his own personal newsletter that covers the intersection between business and politics, The Malaysianist. Do check it out. And for our first session, we have some questions for Emmanuel, and especially due to his experience working in new media organizations, not only in new media organizations, but also in new format, in the new media itself that is perhaps a little bit different from not only the mainstream media that has naturally been, just the print, television and radio, but also perhaps runs with a different format or ways from even the alternative media portals that we have online. So to start off with Emmanuel, it has roughly been a year since the Vibes was launched in the last quarter of last year, and I think from your experience running an organization that just jumped into this media industry, and also at the cusp of the change of a couple of governments, So what has been the challenges that your organization and you face in relation to shrinking space for media, free and independent media? Please go ahead.
Right. Thanks, Zari, for the introduction. Sometimes I don't do myself justice, but anyway. Well, I guess the major challenge any new media outlet would face right now is access, right? So you're talking about access to even public spaces like Parliament. So I think a while back there was a list of news organizations that could cover Parliament proceedings and those who were left out. The Vibes was one of those who were excluded from that list. So access is something that is really a challenge at the moment. Of course, with access, you're also looking at things like various laws and ordinances. I mean, the Vibes was launched last year, and I guess we pretty much covered the news while we were navigating a pandemic. So we had the emergency ordinances on top of all the other things that we, as journalists, usually deal with, including the OSA and all the other legal problems that we usually face, and that itself is also another issue. And then, of course, you're talking about readership. You're talking about monetization. You're talking about even how to make this whole thing viable. So these are some of the challenges that we face, especially, I mean, it's new media is new media. Fresh face is fresh face, but after a while, the honeymoon period just dies off and reality sinks in. And these were some of the things that we have been grappling with throughout the year.
It's curious. You talk about honeymoon period. Do you believe that there is like a certain period that a news organization can sort of I think speaking of experience, I've also gone through this period where, there is a time when you just first started that the government does not actually know who you are. So you are in sort of like a gray area between what is seen as favorable or not favorable to whichever regimes who are in power, right? But I mean, maybe you can talk about that so-called honeymoon period and how how long do you think such a period?
I think for us it did not last too long, because one of the stories that I pushed out that really put us on the map and that really got us attention was, I think, Muhyiddin wanting to resign. This was the first time he wanted to resign after the Agung rebuffed his request for an emergency, to put the country under emergency rule. This was, I think, last year, right? And so there weren't much time for us to enjoy the honeymoon period. So that put us on the map. It gave us a significant amount of coverage and also attention. And then I think the other story was about Muhyiddin's son-in-law being a possible benefactor to an immigration project, which the company would then go on to deny in a few months. But so these stories were all coming in back to back. There was also Kuala Langat and the Selangor Sultan's involvement in it. So we didn't. I mean, it was just editorial, right? I mean, we were trying to catch the news cycle. We were trying to dig and trying to get scoops. We were just doing what anyone else would do. So sadly, the honeymoon period wasn't long for us. But what I would define as honeymoon period is also the period where everybody is just like all gung ho. Everybody wants to go for it. Stories that we push out, there's a slow build, but then after that you sort of plateau, and then you really have to. Some of us will be white knuckling. Some of us will be trying to push ourselves to get stories out. So that's where. But even that phase came very fast for us. So we launched in September. By December, we were already past the phase.
You also mentioned about access to public spaces, and this is very much affects a lot of media organizations. Of course, during the pandemic, the government has used COVID-19 as one of the reasons not to, to restrict access to certain media, and only allow those who are deemed as official media, right? I mean, it is a term that for us in the media industry are very much familiar with. OMO, official media only, and we will have certain events, especially government events, that can only be covered by official media only. But this seems to be exacerbated by the pandemic, and as you have said yourself, the vibes. I assume it's not on that OMO list. Perhaps you can tell us a bit how you deal with that, and also perhaps your thoughts on how the OMO list seems to, in a way, change itself with whichever government that is in power.
I mean, of course, it is an annoyance, right? Because you can't access that space. And the strange part for the vibes, at least, was that our journalists were able to get their press tags, the media tags, the blue ones, right? Was it blue? I'm not too sure. It's a bit different now. I did not apply for my. I did not reapply for that.
The silver one is the online one, and the blue is the.
Yeah. So you get your press tags, right? So they are card-carrying members in this. I mean, their press. They had their press tags and all that, but they were not allowed some of these spaces. Sometimes they were left out of key events. So I think I just checked with someone about an invitation for one of these sessions, and they were somehow left out. And so you wonder why were we dropped off, or why were we not included. So there is this annoyance, yes, because you access to that space means that you sort of have a greater room to sort of get stories and things like that, which you can't if you were to just transcribe something off Facebook Live or YouTube, right? If it's broadcasted live. So I guess it is an annoyance. And I guess the only way to deal with that is, of course, we cover the sessions online, right? And the other way is to think creatively, you know, maybe if it's an MP or if it's someone who can help us, you know, ask certain questions or probably just give us certain feedback of what's going on, you know, behind the scenes when the cameras are off or when the cameras are not focused on these sessions. Sometimes we just got to get people who, I mean, our contacts, people who have worked with us and know with us, to sort of just give us some additional information that they can help us work around some of these limitations. There is a certain, I mean, we have to concede when it comes to limitations. Yeah, I mean, it is limiting, but then we just have to work around it. It can be an exhausting process sometimes, but you know, you just have to do what you have to do.
Emmanuel, whether you are working in a media organization that is newly launched or you are working in the so-called new media, there is always a chance that, you know, by starting anew, you have this chance of, you know, starting from a blank slate and at the same time formulate certain structural things that can help protect your own journalists from harassment or crackdown, especially from state actors. Maybe perhaps you would like to share, if any, what the Vibes have done, and also what you yourself has done for yourself for the Malaysianists.
Sure. I think in terms of the Vibes, I mean, it's pretty obvious that given our ownership structure, the first thing that we have that is an advantage, I guess, is legal covering and legal air cover. So we have seasoned lawyers to help our case. So there were times where I think I was called for to show up at a police station over an article, and you know, I could go. I mean, I could deal with these things with confidence because you know, I know that there are lawyers who would be there to sort of back me up. And such, and if you know, if ever, and I think I've received a couple of few letters of demand for some of my stories. So you know, these things, you know, if you have very good legal covering, it makes the job slightly, I mean, it eases you a little bit, right? So that's one of the biggest advantages, I guess, for working for an organization like the Vibes. As for the Malaysianist is very much, because it's very much a project I do outside the Vibes, I have to be always careful, you know, because to not disrupt my full-time work and to not break my full-time contract. That's the first thing. So I have to be very aware of my limitations there. And so that said, you know, I guess the Malaysianist, because it's very much a one-man show. It doesn't have big money behind it. I rely on a lot of goodwill, and you know, I have because I've been around for some time, I've managed to sort of connect with a lot of interesting people, lawyers especially. So there's always a lawyer friend who's always there to help me if ever things go south, you know, to always help vet or check some of the pieces where I myself personally feel this could potentially get me into a libel suit, you know, and if ever there is the case, then you know, he's always there to help me do things pro bono. But you know, after a while, you know, even myself, I wouldn't want to always rely on him for pro bono help. So that's one thing. The other thing is, of course, I mean, it's just basically dealing with information very, very carefully, you know, whether it's using encrypted storage, whether it's learning how to file your stuff properly, maintaining a certain routine, you know, when it comes to organizing things, you know, because, you know, you just don't know when police or enforcement agencies will just come in and knock on your door, right, and confiscate your laptops and things like that. So that's something that I've practiced over the years, and I think I've come to realize that, you know, being an investigative journalist or doing some form of investigations always requires you to be proactive. So you have to always envision these things ahead of time, envision the worst that can happen to you, and then prepare it. So when you get you know, whistleblower reports or things like that, you know, you have to know how to deal with them. And so I've set some of these mechanisms in place, you know. So that sort of allows me to ensure that at least whatever happens, my sources are protected. my data is protected, and so is the information and all the other documents that come along my way.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of working in a news organization is you have, you know, if you are a journalist, you always have that editor above you, so someone that can check whether you go over the line or not, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that is always apparent to you when you, not only when you're working yourself, but if
Correct.
you're a freelancer, right? But I guess working on your own also comes with its own freedom and all that. I'm just wondering, perhaps just a short one, because I think we only have 1 minute left. How do you balance, you know, between not trying to censor yourself, but at the same time, you know, trying to protect yourself from harassment and also, you know, all this legal action?
You know, there's always this. I mean, there's always that gut feeling, right? I mean, because you've been doing this for so long, so there's always this gut feeling about certain stories and about certain things, and whether you should do it or not. But at the end of the day, right? Like I always tell everyone, I mean, I have priced in the risk. My family has priced in the risk. So there's, you know, you just sometimes can't tell when you know, things will just go south for you, or when state or non-state actors really come down hard on you. You know, these days these days to censor a story doesn't take much. You know, I mean, just for example, even if I were to write a story about you, you know, and I would get your right of reply, which is a journalistic thing to do, you can immediately just get your lawyer, you know, ring him up and say, hey, no, this journalist is asking me for these things, and I want to file an injunction, right? And he can just file an injunction, and boom, you know, your story doesn't see the light of day, because you don't want to break that injunction, right? Once it's sealed, you know, you have to, and you're a defendant in that case. That's it. But that's just sort of low level stuff. But then but the more dangerous stuff, the more dicey stuff, you have to do a risk assessment and see whether you're willing to take the risk or not. Because even if you are really proper in your reporting, you know, there's always someone who will try to find fault with you, and who will always, it's inevitable. So I guess it all boils down to the battles that I want to fight, and the things that I want to pick.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Emmanuel.
No problem.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. We continue with Pramesh. Pramesh Chandran is not a stranger to those who are in the media industry. He is the chief executive and also co-founder of Malaysia Kini, one of our country's most renowned independent news organization. And he also serves as a non-executive director of Kini TV and digital ad agency FG Media. In 2010, he was awarded as a TED, TED Fellow, and also awarded the Asia Foundation Chang Lin Tian Fellow Award. And in 2012, he was awarded a Media Personality of the Year by the Association of Accredited Advertising Agents. So let's go ahead, Prem. You are obviously synonymous with Malaysia Kini, and after 2 decades of Malaysia Kini's founding, especially considering that Malaysia Kini was founded in a way to deal with the censorship that has been going on in the media industry all this while, and also giving a space or a platform for independent reporting, right? What has been your experience, not only handling Malaysia Kini, but also specifically, has anything even changed in the last 2 decades? Like, are we still the same when it comes to press freedom, harassment towards journalists, etc., etc.? Yeah, perhaps you can share some of your experience. Please go ahead, Pramesh.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thanks for the invitation to speak on this very interesting occasion. Well, I think a lot has changed. I used to work in the Sun before we started Malaysia Kini, and really, it was a situation where it would be very hard to get a story out. You can do all the hard work, and you'd come back to the office, and your story would get killed. It was tough times. Stephen and the special issues team worked on a story about death of migrant workers in the camps, and the story got killed, and part of it ran, and the second part got killed, and later Stephen and the team won an award. There's a picture of Mahathir giving Stephen an award for that story. But really, it was really hard to get anything in print. And if you go out and you tell people, people in the middle class or mainstream about issues, they kind of look at you funny. And unless they're reading things like Aliran or Rocket, they were not really being informed. Today we live in a vastly different world. We have so much of information, so many people are publishing content. Like say when Machine was launched, it was really a blue ocean. We were one of the few doing independent media. Today we have people like Emmanuel from the Vibes and so many other medias doing similar things with us. So I think it has been a total change. So it's not just about laws, right? It's also about a culture. I mean, I used to be a journalist, and if I go to a press conference and ask a tough question, you get scolded and laughed at on the spot, and then you go home to your office and you get scolded again, from your editors. Today, that's not the case. When Pakatan Harapan took over, they were being questioned left, right, and center at every single press conference. They were like, how come the media is like so hostile, asking us all these tough questions, right? There was no friendly media. SARS, NST, everybody got in and was like just hammering them with questions, And like Mohideen practically never held a press conference when he was Prime Minister. So, to be in power today is tough. The media are going to be asking questions, If it's not the media, it's a blogger, it's someone else. So really while the laws, may not have changed so much, the culture, the access to information, the way people think, the way people demand information, the way people expect information, the way people expect to be able to comment and say whatever they please, even though it gets publishers like Malaysia Kini in trouble. All that has changed. So I think that, we should not just look at it from the perspective of the law, but the culture of people. There's much more readiness to speak up. We see, school girls speaking up about, sexist jokes by teachers. That would have been impossible 20 years ago. People are speaking up, are saying things, and very often it's actually women, not even men, who are speaking up on so many different issues. Talk about the situation of testing Muslim females, about their periods and things like that. So many issues are coming up. We have stories about royalty, their involvement in business. For example, in Linas, etc. So I think that really it has been a huge change, and I think eventually the law will follow. But definitely the whole culture and expectations in terms of media has evolved tremendously.
We talk about a change of culture when it comes to readers and consumers, but has there been any change in the culture of in state actors such as government themselves? I mean, are they more open and accessible to the media in a way?
I think many ways they try to, right? I mean, for example, like Kyrie putting up data on GitHub, etc. Right? So a lot of ministers, whether it's even during Najib's era or under Pakatan Harapan or even today, know that they need to respond differently. And they know that more people are reading the aggressive online media, not just Malaysia Kini, but other media similar to Malaysia Kini. And very few people are reading things, which are subservient and, the mouthpiece of the governments. So they know that if they really want to, inform people of the issues, they have to work, with the media. So I think they're very reluctant. I don't think they like it. I don't think they enjoy it. I know they find it difficult. But I think that they understand that this is something that now comes with their territory of being a minister.
In the 2 decades of Malaysia Kini, do you see any certain themes or topics that you cover as a news organization that are more likely to get direct attacks or harassment from state or non-state actors?
I think we touch on religion. That is obviously the main taboo, right? And even for Malaysia Kini, we have no interest in touching on an issue which is sensitive to religion. There's no necessity of that. So I think that is something that definitely attracts a lot of policing and attention. But besides that, issues on corruption and stuff like that, they are pretty careful. They don't want to come down too hard because they know that among the public there is a lot of support for reporting or exposés around things like corruption. Recently, look at the environment. Look how hard the public response to the Selangor government's attempt to deforest Kuala Langat. Huge outpouring. from the people, and then politicians from all sides had to jump in, and eventually the Selangor government backed down. You wouldn't have seen such a turnaround 2 decades ago. So I think that while the authorities are still sensitive, there are a lot of areas that we can push: corruption, climate change. I think gender has been a really good issue that we can push back on and demand equality for both genders. So there's been a lot of progress in many areas.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder to every journalist who are listening right now, because I mean, every time we work, we think that we are being restricted so much when it comes to the 3 R's, race, religion, and royalty. But like you said, I mean, there's a number of topics that are still underexplored, that we can still push the envelope. I'm just wondering, shortly, between the 3 R's, are certain R's more tend to get you more attacks than the others? I mean, because I realized that compared to the 3, I think from my experience, I think religion probably is the easiest to write about. But I'm just curious about your experience.
I think they definitely, as I mentioned, religion is very a taboo subject, and we have to be more careful about it. But there's often issues between where religion meets politics. For example, this whole issue about the Timah whiskey. And I was joking that I think the Timah whiskey guys would have sold out every single bottle. They would have made millions of dollars on their whiskey. But when politics meets religion, that's a very important nexus to tackle, right? Because we don't want religious or religious authorities to go beyond their scope into areas that perhaps religion should not be there. But I think in terms of race, for example, in the budget, there was very large allocations for, say, Bumiputra entrepreneurs, and so even that is being contested. We had 50 years of NEP. How far is this going to go? So even that there is pushback. In terms of royalty, definitely nobody's questioning the powers of the ruler. But for example, when the question of the Agong declaring an emergency, that was hotly contested. In terms of the Agong, choosing a prime minister, whether that person had a majority in parliament, or the involvement in royalty, in business, in land clearings, or basically businesses that perhaps harm the environment, because royalty have got a lot of control over land and land deals. So there's a lot of pushback. So I think that the climate has said that people are willing to push back on certain issues, and we definitely have to respect race, religion, and royalty. But there are a lot of issues that people are willing to push back on and question the powers that be.
Thank you very much. It's been great to hear your experience and your insight. We have Claire Rucastle-Brown next. Perhaps she needs no introduction, obviously, and perhaps why you are here to listen to her right now. And she's synonymous with the whistleblower site Sarawak Report, which she founded after working for the BBC, Sky TV, and ITV in the United Kingdom. In 2018, she released the book Sarawak Report, which talks about the 1MDB issue, which, fun fact, I just knew today that it is presently being developed as a screenplay by Hollywood directors Rod Lurie and producer Doug Belgrade. And she continues to cover events in the region, and also through the NGO called Forest South Asia, seeking to promote reforestation, climate change, and indigenous rights. So we'll get down to it. Claire, welcome, and nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and so nice to be at least virtually in touch with Premesh and others who obviously we haven't been able to speak to directly for a long time. Yeah, I think it is only right to start our conversation with the recent arrest warrant issued against you for allegedly defaming the Sultanate of Terengganu. Maybe talk about us a bit on your experience with that case, especially, and whether it has impacted your investigative journalism or your life as a journalist in any way. Please go ahead, Claire. Yes, well, I'm obviously sitting here in much less oppressive media environments in Europe and Britain. And really listening to other speakers just now, it gives me a real, a real reminder of just how brave and difficult it is for journalists in Malaysia who are sitting waiting for the knock on the door when they write stories, when they try to report for truth. So yes, every now and again, I find that, people in positions of authority in Malaysia seek to expose those instruments of intimidation, export those instruments of intimidation towards me to see if they can, they can use the same sorts of tactics to frighten or shut me up as the sorts of tactics they use when they send policemen around to break down people's doors in Kuala Lumpur. Obviously, I'm well protected. Such tactics are regarded with ridicule, horror, and disgust by governments here. So when I receive a criminal defamation warrant from some foreign country, as Britain or Europe would see it, they would say, we don't have these laws. Journalists shouldn't be treated like that. There is already a civil instrument, which is civil defamation. So I have a lot of protection in the jurisdiction that I am in. But yes, it does impact me because obviously we live in a global age, and that gives governments like Malaysia, the present government is in charge of its jurisdiction and is invited to the global table, expected to be a responsible actor. So they have access, for example, to Interpol. And Malaysia has, on previous occasions, under the BN government, attempted to sneak a red notice terror alert through the Interpol process in order to get me arrested and extradited. They did that openly in 2015, and I have been having to consider whether, less openly, the present people who have issued a warrant for my arrest again in Malaysia are trying the same tactics. So in that respect, it does impact on me, but it's not like worrying about whether your door's going to be kicked in by an armed policeman.
Yeah, you talk about how you are being well protected, and it is we see that it was this privilege not only by you but also by other foreign journalists such as Wall Street Journal that had it was that privilege that helped break all the stories, especially about 1MDB when local media could not even talk a bit about what's happening with 1MDB. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts? Do you think this is the only way for the media to report on certain sensitive issues in the countries where medias are so shackled? I mean, do you ultimately need to have this foreign privilege in order to unearth such subjects?
Well, yes, I think to an extent, yes. We're a global community, and we're a global community of journalists. And, let me just make it quite clear. It isn't just a bed of roses for journalists in the UK either. Journalists' rights have been more recognized in the UK nominally, but the powerful and the wealthy have found ways within our systems to make a journalist's life very difficult indeed, and they're very effective at it. Whereas, I don't live in fear of the policeman in the night, I am bullied constantly by very expensive law firms, often hired by Malaysians, who try to get at me that way, simply by bringing what is known as the slap suit, a spurious case. And I know you have the same tactics used in Malaysia. We share the same legal system. That way, journalists, organizations like Malaysia Kini, the equivalent of, can be cost money, and proceeded against by basically financial bullying to shut up about people who are rich and wealthy. So this is a problem I face too. But yes, I think there is a huge element of this. I mean, why do I write about Malaysia? Obviously, I have my connections, and so I do, but for two reasons. One, that there are topics that you can't cover in your own country and stay free as a journalist. You're locked up, and I have to say I've been warned recently that another investigation is now against me. You mentioned the 3 Rs. Apparently, I'm being investigated by the Malaysian authority for sedition, and apparently for other fake news accusations. And doubtless, if I was sitting in KL, I'd be in a lot of hot water for some of the objective criticisms that I've made, I would say, in the public interest, and there would be no problem for me making them based where I am. So therefore, that's a system that works. I publish things that at the moment you can't, but not with impunity.
Yeah, you talk about legal costs and financial bullying. In all those years you were writing about 1MDB, are there any other harassments or attacks from state actors that you face? Perhaps you can share a bit on how it was for you back then.
Well, yes, I mean, yes, I did receive harassment, and journalists do. I received the sort of harassments that you would normally get in Britain if you were covering organised crime. You know, if you were trying to expose some mafia types, you know, people waiting outside your door, people banging, people hacking, people following you, trying to intimidate you, you know, people trying to sort of hire private investigators, all that sort of tactic. It's not state intimidation, of course. It was intimidation hired by state actors in Malaysia, but not state actors where I was. So yes, I did experience all those kinds of pressures, which again, journalists all over the world will do when they are exposing criminals. But again, you know, if you can create an environment where the role of a journalist is is respected as vital in the public interest, to expose when things go wrong, to expose when politicians go wrong, you know, to counterbalance against abuse of authority, that we need that. It's a public interest service. You know, it was great to hear Premier's optimism that things are getting better in Malaysia, that attitudes are changing, and that there's a growing consensus to support the role of journalists. And I hope that, you know, that strengthens your cultural respect as the years go by, or sooner rather than later, for the role of journalists.
Thank you, Claire. It's great to hear from you. With that, we move to our second session, where we ask all our three panelists on how journalists and the media industry can move forward when facing all this pressure. And it is just such a nice time to segue from what Claire was saying previously about protection for journalists, how she's being protected in the UK, and certain protection for journalists who write about sensitive topics about organized crimes. Perhaps you can elaborate on this a bit, Claire. I mean, obviously comparing your experiences working facing two different countries and with two different systems, but you know, although with one inheriting from the other because of, you know, colonialism. But perhaps if we can compare, what are the sort of basic protections and infrastructure that perhaps which exists perhaps not only in the UK but in other countries with better press freedom, and which Malaysia do not have, and what we must have. Please go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, I think it's a question of you know, you do have to fight for your freedoms, and you do have to stand up for your rights, because otherwise, you know, someone will take them from you. And you know, I think a lot of the rights and freedoms and recognized, you know, support network around journalists, you know, it exists because, you know, journalists have stood up against oppression and argued for it. And unfortunately, I think, you know, this is the battle that you're now fighting in Malaysia. I do see, you know, I've seen a chilling of the coverage of news in Malaysia. It was great to hear Premish talking optimistically about the, you know, the wider, more general trends. But I, as an outside reader, see a nervousness now in the way that the press in Malaysia covers events. And you know, it absolutely began with the overthrow of the PH government. And Premish summed it up, you know, PH were getting harangued daily by a liberated and confident media. And the day they were kicked out, Muhyiddin pretty much closed down press conferences, just avoided them, ignored them, but also harassed. also harass them. There's no doubt you see a self-censorship now in the media that didn't exist when there was that brief explosion of media freedom after GE14. And I think, you know, politicians in Malaysia have got to be pushed into accepting that criticism is good for you. And if you've got nothing to hide, then you stand up and you answer the questions, you know. And I think that the media have just got to argue its case. I see, for example, coverage now where, for example, your convicted former prime minister might make some kind of claim or comment, and I see it reported as if, you know, that's it, with no rebuttal, no criticism. Now, if you're going to report some self-serving excuses by Najib, then let's hear some criticism from the opposition within the same article. You know, don't just let him get away with it. So I think some of this rests on your shoulders, actually, as journalists, despite the fact that, as we've discussed, you're under a lot of pressure. You're going to have to push back.
Yeah, Prem, the question for you is, I mean, you are obviously involved in the Malaysian Media Council. This is obviously, it's an attempt to overhaul systemic infrastructure when it comes to our media industry, right? But in your opinion, what are the sort of fundamental changes and reforms specifically that is needed specifically to protect journalists and to promote media freedom? Premesh, maybe you can talk a bit on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, as you all know, that the PH government, as part of its manifesto, talked about supporting a media council, something that the industry has been talking about. And then, you know, during the time, there was a pro tem committee formed and a bill drafted, you know, to set up a media council that, in a way, promotes self-regulation in the industry, you know, with the participation of the industry, of civil society, and, you know, of journalists and other stakeholders. There has not been much movement since the fall of the PH government. The previous minister, Saifuddin Abdullah, did not take a meeting with the committee, and neither has the current communications minister, Anwar Musa, wanted to follow up on the matter. Obviously, now there's an MOU between the Pakatan Harapan and the current Keluarga Malaysia government. So as a spirit of Keluarga, maybe they want to discuss the media council. But I can't say I'm very optimistic. I think that the governments don't really know what to do with the media in terms of such a local media. So they do want to exert control. I think partly it's done through ownership, buying out portals and buying out media, or offering other incentives for media to comply. So I think that is definitely the case. So I think in terms of regulation, I think we are a bit of a standstill. I think just to answer Siti Kasim's question, which you posted in the chat box, I think the question of mine was reflection between what we have today and what we had 20 years ago, and I'm talking about the progress we have made over a period of 20 years. I definitely, this year has been a very expensive year for Malaysia Kini. We lost $500 million earlier in the year, and then we also lost the Arab Australia gold mining case, and also got a very hefty fine. I think we paid out more than R1 million, which is a very substantial part of our budget this year. And we also have the current case going on, right? Hamidi is suing us for comments by our readers, and there are other few cases going on. So I'm not saying that there is no repression and things are fine. What I'm trying to emphasize is that the ground has shifted. What people desire, what people need, the media that they read, they no longer desire compliant media, and they can tell the difference. And through their WhatsApp, through their Facebook, they are getting better content out there. So it's not so much whether the government is becoming better and more lenient and more comfortable with the media, it's that the people have moved. And I think that's the great story to me, how the people want better media. I mean, Claire has done a great story on 1MDB. I fully applaud her work. And, if we can tell stories about how journalists are heroes, how journalists work hard to tell the stories and build the appreciation for the role of journalists in society, to things like movies, dramas, sitcoms, whatever it is, right? But ultimately, the powers that be are not going to respond to a bunch of civil society or people saying, "Hey, I want free media." It is the people who demand free media to which we're going to get free media. And for example, Claire's 1MDB story played a big role, because suddenly people said, wow, we're actually getting robbed of billions of dollars. And if the media is not there to report it, we wouldn't know about this, So, it was such a fundamental role the media played in exposing that story, Claire, the Edge did a great job. Malaysia Kini Biz Guna did some stories. A lot of people contributed, but essentially it was media all over the world telling that story. So, sorry, it's a bit of echo. Yeah. So so I think that's what we need to build. If we want to change laws in the country, it's not going to happen by petitions. It's going to happen by the groundswell, and people really demanding and essentially refusing to read media which is not independent. So I don't mind if they read Malaysia Kini or another independent media. I'm fine with it. If we are not reading Malaysia Kini, means Malaysia Kini has to back up and do a better job. We just stop reading media which is compliant, and they will naturally have to evolve, or they have to get out of the way.
Ramesh, you made a nice point about change needs to come from inevitably the readers, because that's what we serve. We serve the readers. We exist because of readers. So maybe you can talk a bit about what kind of changes or reforms should the readers demand that would help protect us journalists from all this harassment and attacks.
I think partly readers are already demanding. Look at what happened to Utusan. Utusan circulations went down the drain. So they're already making that choice every day on one part, and they should keep on making those choices and really support the media that are voicing the view. I mean, Malaysia Kini is a key benefit. When we lost the case about contempt, we raised over $750,000 in 4 hours. So you can let the judges say whatever they want, right? But when people stand up, whichever way they can, to support independent media, to support Claire, to support other journalists doing their job, it sends a very strong signal that this is what we want. We want good independent media who really are voicing out issues that are important to the people. So whether it's reading or supporting a media which does a good job, staying away that medias that don't, those are the best signals that the people can do. And I think people in the arts and the culture, we can make movies, other things, to keep building the pressure, to normalize the heroic role of journalists are doing in society, the role a journalist does to move a country forward in terms of debate, in terms of a narrative, in terms of what a country's vision should be. So the crystallizing of the vision of the country, of what Malaysia should be in Malaysia 100 in 2063, or Merdeka 100 in 2057, that's the role of journalists, to craft that vision, of which then politicians have to follow suit. And once that happens, then you're going to have institutional reform in terms of a media council and other things. But I think legal and institutional reform follows public pressure, not the other way around.
Thanks very much. If I may go back to Claire, because I don't think we quite dissected this just now. What are the sort of the basic protection that journalists in other freer countries may take for granted that they are still not around in Malaysia, you think, that would protect journalists from attacks, whether from state or non-state actors? What I mean, for example, any kind of laws, or
I think what I see as an outsider going on in Malaysia is blatant intimidation, frankly. I mean, that particular case where Malaysia Kini was attacked, even though it took down a comment, goodness knows who put up that comment. It could have been set up, who knows? But these sorts of this sort of relentless pouncing is effective. it's been effective on the media in Malaysia over the last 2 years. I think, you know, we've seen some comments coming up recognizing that. And I don't know that readers are really getting at the moment what they want in terms of free media. I think they feel they're reading a very nervous media at the moment in Malaysia. And I do think there is a role for journalists, for civil society to provide leadership in these issues. You know, you can't just respond. I mean, you know, like Rupert Murdoch perhaps does, you know, to the desires of readers or what they think they want to see. You know, ladies without clothes or whatever, we'll give it to you. No, I think you know, I think journalists with a sense of responsibility have a mission to explain what, you know, rules and freedoms should be respected, and to argue their case so that we explain how things are working to people who don't have that much time in the day and want to read what's going on. So we can't just respond. We have a responsibility to argue our case, I think. And then, you know, if it's rejected, it's rejected. In terms of laws, it's very complicated. I mean, we don't have this whole panoply of multimedia laws. I think it's really a question, you know, of getting rid of laws rather than implementing new ones. You know, just get rid of all these restrictions, these multimedia acts. We've got rid of a lot of the restrictions. I mean, you referred to the fact that you've inherited some of our stuff. You know, a lot of the things that you've inherited, we have subsequently, in the last, you know, 100 years, we've got rid of them as our democracies have progressed. You know, a lot of our laws came from when we weren't democracies either, you know. And so the sedition law, we got rid of it. The criminal libel law, we've got rid of it because, you know, the more democratic you become, the more obvious that these laws are unnecessary, outdated, and oppressive, and conflict with human rights and general, you know, global, you know, agreements now on what is acceptable. So I think it's really a question of going through and getting rid of outdated laws, getting rid of that appalling fake news law. We don't have a fake news law as such. We do have harassment laws. We do have laws that you know, prohibit the media from being used as a vicious weapon, and you know, the distinction is clear. So, you know, to use the media as a weapon against vulnerable people, no. To use the media as an instrument to question very powerful people in authority, sure, yes, we need that. So, you know, I think you need to strip out these oppressive laws, and it's very unfortunate it wasn't done when Pakatan Harapan were there with that on their agenda. I think you need to also start to accept that you should be signing up to some of the global charters. We have our Article 10. You know, there are various global charters that Malaysia is refusing to sign up to, which relate to freedom of expression and, you know, freedom of religion and all the rest. And these are turned into sort of bugbears by people who want to continue to oppress. And as for your 3 Rs, you know, I feel that these positions where, you know, offence points are really used as a tool you know, to prevent criticism of the 3 Cs, cronyism, corruption, and crime. Too often, criticism of the 3 Cs are, you know, are treated as if they were criticism of the 3 Rs. And it's a device, it's an abuse, it's a cynical abuse. And, you know, you're very brave to be journalists in Malaysia. And you need to stick your ground because you know what's right and wrong, and so does the public.
Thanks, Claire. On a more hopeful note, we can move to Emmanuel. Maybe you have some suggestions or recommendations for any young and aspiring journalists who wish to deliver more hard-hitting and more investigative journalism, perhaps.
Right. I guess first of all, you know, don't emulate any of us old oldies right now. I mean, but really seriously, the landscape has changed. how you deliver information has changed with the emergence of TikTok and Instagram. It's a very different field. I cut my teeth 10 years ago, and a decade on, things are very different. So I guess for younger journalists who want to get into the field and want to do investigative stuff, I mean, the barrier to entry technically is very low. I mean, just say, for example, if you want to start a newsletter like some of us are doing, I mean, it's not costly to a certain degree. I guess getting it up to sustainability is another issue altogether. But if you want to put your stuff out there, it's very much easy, right? I mean, to do a TikTok video, you just need a phone, and I think the younger people today know what they're doing, and I think a lot of us who have been in these larger institutions, just can't sort of wrap our heads around it, right? But it works, and the way the younger guys are just pushing out content, whether it's on Kuala Langat, the deforestation, or whether it's on issues of corruption, or whether it's cronyism. I mean, it's a very interesting field. So be yourself. That's the first thing, and just start pushing out stuff that you feel that is very much close to your heart, and do it in the format that you feel comfortable with. I can't do video for the life of me. Okay, but that's one thing. And I think the second thing I would tell younger journalists or aspiring journalists would be to look for opportunities. I mean, opportunities over prestige. So sometimes you may be in a very good or very stable news organization, but there are no such opportunities for you to sort of be an investigative journalist. And that sort of robs you of that opportunity. So always look for opportunities, and the opportunities that you get would carry you through. It's a very trial and error process. So go where the opportunities are. If you have an idea of what kind of journalism, what kind of investigative journalism you want to do, it's always good to be in an environment where they are supportive of what you want to do, because I mean, we are operating in Malaysia. Right, and and like it or not, I guess investigative journalism is, I'm not sure. Some people say it's dying. Some say we are an exotic species. I just don't. I mean, it's very sad to hear that, because I mean, we are journalists and we are supposed to be the check and balance, right? And to hear people say that is sort of it means something else. It's as if that aspect of journalism is sort of died down, which I disagree, of course. But for younger journalists, go where the opportunities are, and you'd be surprised, because at the end of the day, it's your byline that carries you forward, right? And always work the ground, build contacts. Don't stay behind your screens. Of course, with COVID and all, you got to ensure that you adhere to SOPs. The third thing I would say for aspiring journalists would be to look at a niche. When we're looking at investigative journalism, we always need to think about the human rights elements of it, or the business elements of it, right? So 1MDB is a big one, but then of course you also have the treatment of migrant, or the abuse of migrant workers in Malaysia, which has, and I think there are a number of investigative reporting that has been done. PKFZ scandal, for example, that's another business kind of story. But there are also other areas which are underreported and which are unexplored. For example, in the sports industry, right? I mean, there's just so much money there that are just gone unaccounted for, which has real life effect on Malaysia and Malaysian sporting industry. But it's a very different field, because I mean, I can't jump into sports generally. I'm not an aficionado. That's one thing. But at the same time, I mean, you have to understand the concept. I mean, you have to understand the sector, how it works, how people think, and it's different from business, for example. So find a niche, and don't be afraid to explore those niches. The good thing about being a young journal these days is that, like I said, the barrier to entry to do specialized stuff is very, very low. Of course, it is dangerous, so you definitely need legal help and so on and so forth, which I think if you find it, you should be able to get some decent support. Local news, for example, hyper local stuff. You rarely see these things being investigated thoroughly, and I think these are all opportunities where younger ones can just go in, make a name for themselves. So those are some of the things that I would advise younger journalists to consider. And always be, just think outside the box, because like you said, this is new media, and the way we produce stories and the way we produce content is radically different from how it was years ago.
Thanks, Emmanuel. It's always easy to wallow in despair about the state of rights in our country, but I hope all the remarks from our panelists, all the recent remarks would give us a bit of hope, because hope is what we need to drive forward. And with that, next we will move to field the questions from our viewers. We have some already. I think I would like to start with Andrew Koo, who mentioned, don't forget about the fourth R, which is the ringgit. And like Claire has said just now, I mean, it's mostly to cover criticisms toward cronyism, corruption, and crime. And it's not only political bullying, but also corporate bullying. So perhaps we can hear a bit from, quickly from all three of you on your experience and how one can deal with bullying from the corporate sector rather than politicians. We can start with Prem, and then Emmanuel, and then Claire. Please go ahead, Prem.
Yeah, I think corporations also are very concerned about independent news coverage. I think there's a lot of dealings going on. So during the Pandora papers, we mentioned a lot of names, but one company did take an injunction against us, which we are fighting in court, and we hopefully will win soon, and that story will come out. So I think that corporations also try to dangle the advertising carrot, or pull out advertising, but we've made it very clear that our editorial coverage is independent of any advertising deal that we may have. I think a lot of corporations, they also need to kind of look around and look at their businesses and ask themselves what is that they have to hide, right? And it is true that it's can be difficult to run a clean business, but I think that there's so much heaps of rooms that corporations can do to do better. When you look at climate change, you look at labor issues, it's high time they do. They make obscene amounts of profits, many of the big ones. It's high time they really look at themselves as corporate leaders and make an ethical decision. Yes, I know you can get away with it, but to make an ethical decision that this is just not the business you want to operate, and then come around. And I think journalists and media companies also should say, if we band together and we say that, no, look, we are not going to take your advertising, dollar, and we are going to report accurately and fairly on business issues. So I think there's a lot going on in business. I think it's being underreported. I think, but like Malaysia, we definitely focus more on politics than we do business, much to my regret. I really would like to do much more in business. We tried to do it with Kini Biz a few years ago, but definitely if we have extra resources, we'd want to focus, on a lot of dealings in the corporate sector.
Mano, next.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pramesh said a few interesting points there. So yeah, of course, you have the issue of injunctions. You have dangling the advertising carrot. You also have lawsuits. Some of these guys, I mean, they just come with just heavy firepower. You know what I mean? And I think the problem is that a lot of this. I mean, it's also because of the nexus of business and politics in Malaysia. And a lot of these corporates that have money to spend on advertising dollars are also sometimes GLCs themselves, right? So it's very difficult to navigate that. Where do you draw the line? That's the question. But I think ultimately it boils down to the editors themselves as well, right? I mean, if they themselves see themselves as newsmen first, businessmen second, then of course you're going to get a greater degree of coverage. I mean, greater freedom to cover stuff. But the other thing I think that's very much unexplored is, of course, what we're seeing in the States, for example, whereby you have solo journalists going out there and producing stuff. So I think that probably is going to disrupt, because I'm not sure about you, right? But I think, you have BBNU. But even for the Malaysians, I guess, with the small number of subscribers that I get, the only reason they subscribe to me is because they believe in me. You see, so that's it. It's not because I'm some kind of Hollywood star or something like that, right? No, so I think some of these models, I think, would probably be a bit more interesting to explore, a bit more viable to explore. I guess the only reason that a lot of journalists are not going down this route is because of, we don't have a lot of capital with us, to set out as entrepreneurs. It's a different game altogether, right? But I think these things would probably be something that we should consider, because if the journalist has a certain level of trust, people are willing to support the journalists, then I guess we are then looking at a different kind of viability there, and also a different kind of corporate ownership of media, because this time it's run by journalists. It's no longer tycoons or politicians. So these are some of the things that I think we should consider and should explore.
Yeah, I agree, Emmanuel. I think the model of trying to pander to everyone for clicks and in the end selling your soul is fast dying off. And sometimes it's not about everyone. Sometimes it's only about that 100 or 1,000 true believers, right? I mean, they follow you because they believe in your idols, in your values, right? I mean, so sometimes it's only about pleasing those readers. Claire, if you anything to add to that when it comes to corporate?
Yes, it's all about money, isn't it? And I guess that's, if you're setting out to be an independent journalist, as I hope every journalist wants to place the public interest before anything else. So what are they going to find? If they go into the mainstream media, or indeed most even online media now, they will probably find that their employer has an agenda. And you've mentioned advertising. So there's that pressure. When I tried to get stories published about 1MDB, what I found very quickly was I guess I knew. The mainstream media, by and large, wasn't covering these sorts of corruption environment stories, certainly in places like Malaysia. And there was an enormous reluctance when I came with this huge scandal on the part of major news organizations, either to upset their advertisers in the corporate and banking world, who were their customers, or to land themselves with a whole lot of slap suits. So time and again, I would actually find myself largely on my own as someone who didn't care because I was too small, so I just got it out. So that's a major impediment. It means that we're not covering the right stories, and it's something I complain about with the mainstream media in Britain all the time. They'll happily attack politicians. Most politicians don't have much money. They're an easy target, actually. They'll attack professionals. They won't be half as comfortable about attacking big business. And that's not the only resource, obviously, that major corporations have. There is a whole network of major professional organizations. And I'm not just talking about lawyers, I'm talking about PR people, I'm talking about corporate investigation people, all who service, to create counter campaigns. Look at how the fossil fuel industry, how the palm oil industry have set about silencing media concerns. There's a massive operation going, and I found myself, at the receiving end of vilification from PR companies, greenwash campaigns, setting out to create a narrative against you. And they even set up their own think tanks to create narratives that are anti-climate change, anti-progress, and so forth. And of course, you will find yourself as journalists, if you're dealing with these very important subjects, you will be personally attacked. These narratives are designed to upset people. So people who you write about, for example, deforestation, or you write about, negligence in the palm oil industry, or human rights abuses in a major industry like the palm oil industry, these all need to be tackled. you will immediately become the butt of anti-propaganda, interested propaganda hired by those industries, and also angry people who have been led to believe that you're insulting their way of life. So you're up against big money invested interests. Good luck. It's a challenge. But someone just texted a question, you know, do you regret having received the harassment you've had doing the stories that you've done? And the answer is no, the harassment is a sign that I'm doing the right stories, because I've created I've provoked such a reaction. So that tells me I'm doing the right stories.
Thank you, Claire. We have two questions from a user called Kingmaker Maker and another one from Zareen Humaira. Both touched on the Press Freedom Index by Reporters Without Borders. We saw Malaysia actually falling down after we went up in the index a bit during the Pakatan Harapan administration. So I just want to ask Pramesh and Emmanuel, do you think, from your experience, do you think the government and civil society actually cares about this ranking, or do they just see it as, you know, just noise at the back? Emmanuel, you can go first, and then we'll have Pramesh.
Oh gosh, it's right. Well, I guess from the standpoint of the government, I don't know. I mean, do they even bother? I'm not too sure. You know, I mean, from my perspective, of course, they will say they are. You know, who isn't? But I guess if they really mean it, that's a different story altogether. You know, I mean, if they really mean it, they would just, you know, I mean, just remove some of these things that prohibit press freedom, isn't it? I mean, criminal defamation. I mean, what is that? OSA, MCMC. I mean, it's a Communications Multimedia Act. I mean, if they really, I mean, you got to put where your money where your mouth is, right? So clearly, it isn't the case, and clearly it has not been. As for civil society, yes, I think there have been a lot of. I mean, I know of people who have raised this up, you know, and I think some of them do see this as a cause for concern, you know, and they have made different statements. They have come out to state their views, and I think the media has carried their views as well. So there's certainly this gap between civil society and also the government in terms of viewing press freedom.
Ramesh?
Yeah, I think the problem with these indexes is that it lacks bite, right? You know, so what if I drop by 20 points? It's not going to hit my pocket. On the other hand, for example, when U.S. Customs stop an importation of gloves from Top Glove or something like that, so huge implications, and then people have to respond to them. So I think that it is there's a lot of work being done to look at press freedom, but there has to be kind of a financial bottom line, so that countries try to improve their in the press freedom index or any other index that is. Without which I don't think they will give it a lot of attention. So I think there is a role for some sort of press ranking, but we need to figure out how does it convert to pressure to back up.
Thanks, Pramesh. And for our last question from user Mary Maguire, she said she would like to see the media boycott Najib's press conferences and remarks. Well, considering how Najib has been treating the media during Barisan Nasional administration, ethically and professionally, what are your thoughts on not running his remarks? I know Claire has said her piece just now, but just want to hear from Pramesh and Emmanuel as well. And then if we have time, we can hear from Claire again. Pramesh?
Well, a lot of us, this whole idea of deplatforming, right, or taking away people that we don't respect. I think to a certain extent you can do that, but I think that there is also it doesn't work in many ways. I think it's really important that some of the comments are mentioned, and there's there's enough rebuttal of those points of view. So I think we enjoy having a comments section in Malaysia Kini, because our readers will come out and say the most funniest thing when we have a politician saying something stupid or doing something stupid. So we allow our readers to have their say, and I think that helps to balance whatever's being reported on a politician.
Emmanuel?
Well, I think in the case for Najib, I guess I mean I do understand why news portals will want to push out his statements, right? Especially if you're running an ad-driven model. I mean, Najib, I mean, he has a legion of haters and fans, so people would just flock to the site to read it, right? And I guess then that's where we draw the ethical line of should we allow him to, I mean, should we publish what he says or should we not, right? It's a very tricky question. So it's easier for me to answer if it's the Malaysianist because it's my project. So I would say no. I mean, it's an adversarial newsletter. So if ever it is going to discuss Najib, it's going to discuss Najib in the context of him in his 1MDB SRC charges. It's going to be him, in the context of flip-flopping and things like that. It's a very critical take. But in the terms of the vibes, for example, the vibes is editorial. So it all boils down to the editorial stand of a newsroom, right? And if you're a subscriber or reader, I think you will be able to tell. And I guess it's also incumbent on us to inform our readers, this is our stand, right? And this is what we say. So I guess in the case of the vibes, for example, they would cover Najib. And I think a colleague of mine did an extensive interview with him. But we allowed him to do that, and of course we would definitely then follow up with reactions and analysis and so on, which would give probably a more critical take on certain things. So of course there is that gap between publishing something from Najib and then publishing a react or an analysis, and between that gap, I mean, people would just react, and we also have to allow that space. I mean, they can comment on our social channels, they can call us out, and so on and so forth. And because that's what it means, right? If we subscribe to press freedom, we don't censor even our. I mean, unless of course it's going to land us into some kind of defamation suit or libel suit. But then usually we would take the vibes in the context of the vibes. You would have his views, and then you'd have analysis and reactions, and most of them are usually critical.
Thanks, Emmanuel. I think there's a very good comment on deplatforming in the chat by Katrina J. I implore anyone who wants to read more about the debate to read her comment. And I think we have come to the end of our panel, and I think we will end with a call to action. We will ask all three panelists for one call to action. What do they want all media organizations and journalists in Malaysia to do on this International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists? We can start with Emmanuel, and then Pramesh, and then Claire. Please go ahead, Emmanuel.
Yeah, I'll just say something cliche, I guess. Since it is to all journalists, I guess we still need to fight the good fight at the end of the day, and just keep doing that. That's what we're here for.
Ramesh?
Yeah, I think the aim should not be expecting the government to change. The aim is to build allies, rally the troops, and get people on the ground to be in favor of press freedom, to be in favor of speaking out. Let's have a whistleblower of the year award for people who leak information and tell on corruption and call a spade a spade. Let's empower every community, every journalist to speak out. Let's create a culture of speaking up, to power, speaking truth to power. I think that's what ultimately makes the difference, so that it becomes part and parcel of who we are as Malaysians, who the country is. We've seen all these corruption scandals. We've had enough of it, and as a rakyat, as people, we are going to start speaking up and saying enough is enough. I think let's build that culture, and I think media will do fine from there.
Claire?
Yeah, I've sort of seen one or two comments. We tried, we give up hope. And I think really maintaining the truth, standing up for what's right and the truth and for freedom is an ongoing struggle, and the next generation has to take it up. because these are our most valuable assets. The difference between living in a free society where truth can be argued, as opposed to living in an oppressive society where everyone has to live a lie because that suits the guy in charge. So that's worth fighting for and handing the baton on to. And young journalists should not give up just because the struggle has turned out to be hard. Of course it's hard. It's anything worth fighting for is not going to be easy, but it's still worth doing.
Thank you, Claire. It has been a great 1 hour and a half spending time with you, Pramesh, Emmanuel, and Claire. Thank you very much for spending some time with us. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. This has been Malaysian Media in Distress, how independent journalists keep the powers in check, in conjunction with the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, organized by Center for Independent Journalism, Freedom Film Network, and Gerakan Media Merdeka, Geramm. With that, this is the end of our session. Thank you once again, everyone, and I give the floor back to our organizers. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Hi all, so I will now pass it back to Alia to talk about the purple book and why do we do not launch that purple book.
Okay. Hi everyone. As part of tonight's event, we're also launching the Purple Book, which is basically a handbook for journalists, which has been prepared by CIJ in collaboration with Geramm over the past few months. And it is basically, it's going to be available online and also like in a physical copy. And it basically aims to help journalists be more aware of our rights when faced with various situations while we're carrying out our duties. And this is more important at a time when there are basically like no laws to protect us, and it is up to us to protect ourselves. A lot of the content is built on previous efforts by the Bar Council. It had in the past already produced a red book, which is available like for all, but this is the contents have been adapted to provide a more tailored guide for media practitioners. Among the areas covered in the book would be what happened if we are under investigation, what happened if we are being arrested. For example, how many of us know that if we are called by the police to assist in an investigation, we do not have to go to the police station. We actually have a right to tell them to come and find us either at our office or at any place of our convenience. And we have a right to legal assistance. And then things like what to do if our phone, SIM card, camera, or laptops are confiscated. And then in the worst case scenario, what happens if we are actually taken to court? What happens if we are arrested and put into lockup and all things like that. There are also areas, for example, like defamation. A lot of these things that it's not just applicable to like new journalists, but I think because it's not something that is like actively told to us like as we are doing our work, so it's something that we have to find out on our own most times. So this is a handy guidebook if you like we want to get like a refresher or something. And then why is it important? We are launching today because, well, it's in conjunction with the Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. And again, in the absence of laws to protect working journalists, that is where impunity can happen. There are, I think a lot of journalists here like don't really understand the extent of impunity that's happening outside, where journalists are literally like getting murdered or getting physically attacked. And here, there is not even like a Malay word to explain what impunity means. So that is how bad it is. And then if we don't take action, or we don't speak up on issues that is actually like impunity, it might get worse to the extent of what's already happening elsewhere, even though they have like better laws to protect them. So particularly like for freelancers, this guide is also handy not only for journalists who are working with media organizations, but also freelancers, because it has resources. For example, where can we find a lawyer if we ever need to, if maybe we don't want to go through our company, or our company does not have access to a lawyer. So you can find the answer in the Purple Handbook. Other than that, I think that's about it, and I'll just pass it back to Nelly. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming to our session today. And we'll be following up with you guys about the teachers and all the purple book and all. And it would be great if everyone can just switch on your camera for us to take a picture. It's really a very satisfying attendance that we have today.